The road stretched endlessly ahead, quiet and cold under the weight of dawn. Each step felt heavier than the last. The sky was pale, the wind sharp, and every breath stung like a reminder of how far he had come, and how far he still had to go. He had started this journey believing in the dream, believing that effort and heart would be enough. But life has a way of testing belief, of stripping away the easy parts until only truth remains. He looked down at his worn shoes. The soles were thin, almost torn. His hands trembled slightly, but he clenched them tight. Not in anger, but in quiet defiance. "I must keep going," he whispered to himself. He remembered the faces that once laughed at him. The ones who told him that his goals were too big, that people like him did not make it far. Those words had echoed for years, sometimes louder than his own thoughts. There were nights when the dream felt like a burden, when the silence around him grew too heavy, when every door he knocked on stayed closed. But even then, something small inside refused to die. A voice that said, "You are not done yet." He stopped for a moment, watching the horizon turn gold with sunrise. The world was waking up, and for the first time in days, he felt like maybe it was waking up for him too. He could still remember the day it all began. A promise made in a small room, with nothing but a notebook, a single light bulb, and a heart full of faith. That promise was simple: to never stop trying, to never give in to fear, to keep moving no matter how slow, no matter how tired. Because life does not reward those who quit halfway. It honors those who finish what they started. The journey had not been kind. It had taken his comfort, tested his patience, and demanded his strength. But it had also given him something more valuable: resilience. He began walking again. Each step now felt like a statement, a declaration that he was still here. That failure could not define him. The road bent toward the mountains, their peaks hidden in clouds. They looked impossible to climb, yet somehow he smiled. He knew that every mountain looked impossible until someone decided to take the first step. He remembered his mother's words, spoken long ago when he was afraid to begin. She had said, "The road will not always be clear, but if you walk long enough, you will find the light." Those words had carried him through storms, through rejection letters, empty pockets, and lonely nights. He had almost stopped many times, almost let go, almost convinced himself that giving up would hurt less. But the truth is, giving up hurts forever. Trying hurts only for a while. He took another step forward, then another, and as he did, he began to realize something powerful. The struggle was not a sign of failure. It was proof that he was still fighting, and it meant he had not given up. The pain, the exhaustion, the setbacks, they were not the end. They were part of the becoming. He thought of the people who looked up to him, who believed even when he could not. He thought of the dream waiting just beyond that next hill, the dream that demanded to be earned. And he said again, "Stronger this time, I must keep going." The wind howled, but he did not slow down. The road curved into shadows, but his steps did not waver. He was not the same person who began this journey. He was stronger now, wiser and unbreakable in spirit. Because once you decide that quitting is not an option, the world begins to move with you. The sun climbed higher, and with it, his heartbeat found a rhythm. Steady, sure, unstoppable. The destination was still far away, but his purpose was clear. He was not walking toward a dream anymore. He was walking as one. And though the path ahead remained uncertain, his voice carried through the wind, firm, unwavering, alive. "Keep going." He walked until his legs trembled, until the weight on his shoulders began to feel like part of his body. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the crunch of gravel beneath his feet, seemed to whisper the same truth back to him: keep going. He had learned that success is not built in a moment of glory, but in the quiet hours when no one is watching. When the world moves on without you, when there are no cheers, no applause, only your own breath echoing through the silence. He remembered those long nights when the clock ticked louder than his heartbeat, when his dreams felt too far and failure felt too close. But those nights had shaped him. They had carved strength into his spirit, patience into his bones, and faith into his heart. There was a time when he believed effort was enough, that working hard would guarantee success, but life taught him otherwise. Sometimes effort only gets you to the starting line. The rest is endurance. The rest is the ability to walk forward when your mind screams to stop. He passed by an old house at the edge of the road. Its walls cracked, its windows broken. It looked abandoned, yet a small light flickered from inside. It reminded him of himself. Worn down, but still alive, still fighting, still shining. He stopped for a moment, leaning against a fence, breathing deeply. The air smelled of earth and rain, fresh, grounding, real. He realized that sometimes life slows you down so that you can finally see what matters. The dream he chased was no longer about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving something to himself, that he could rise above the fear, the doubt, and the pain that once held him captive. He thought of his father, a man who never had much, but who always believed that strength was not in muscles, but in the will to stand again after falling. His father used to say, "The moment you stop trying is the moment you start dying." Those words had burned into his memory, guiding him through every dark turn. They echoed now, a quiet thunder inside his chest. As he continued walking, he passed a small river. The water moved fast, twisting around rocks, but never stopping. He crouched down and stared at it, mesmerized. That is what life is, he thought. It bends, it crashes, it stumbles, but it flows. He stood up, feeling a new kind of calm. The kind that does not come from easy days, but from surviving the hard ones. He had lost things, money, friendships, opportunities, but what he gained was far more valuable. The unbreakable belief that he could start again. He began to notice the details around him, the sound of distant birds, the golden rays of light filtering through the trees, the steady rhythm of his own footsteps. It felt like the world was walking with him. Somewhere deep inside, he knew that every person who ever achieved something great had walked this same lonely path. They had all faced fear. They had all felt like giving up. The difference was simple. They did not. He smiled at the thought. Because maybe, just maybe, the secret to success is not talent, not luck, not even opportunity. Maybe it is stubbornness. The refusal to quit when it hurts. He remembered a time when he stood in front of a crowd and froze. The words he had prepared vanished from his mind. He saw laughter in the audience, felt the sting of humiliation. For days he could not look anyone in the eye. But instead of running from that pain, he studied it. He faced it until it no longer controlled him. And now when he spoke, his voice carried not perfection, but power. The kind that comes from surviving your own weaknesses. He whispered again, almost to himself, "I must keep going." This time it was not just a statement, it was a promise. He knew there would be more challenges ahead. More rejections, more moments where the dream seemed impossible. But he also knew that each obstacle was a test of his commitment. A question life kept asking. How badly do you want this? He wanted it enough to sacrifice comfort. Enough to walk alone. Enough to start over every single time he failed, because dreams are not handed to anyone. They are earned through the grind, the tears, and the endless decision to rise again. He began to run now, his tired legs finding strength from somewhere unknown. He was no longer chasing the dream, he was becoming it. The wind whipped against his face, and he could almost hear his future calling out, not with promises, but with purpose. Every step became a prayer, every breath a declaration. He was not done. He was not broken. He was becoming unstoppable. Ahead, the road curved into a hill. At the top, he saw a faint light, a sign that he was nearing something new. Maybe it was success. Maybe it was another challenge. But whatever it was, he was ready. He slowed his pace, looked up at the sky, and smiled through the sweat and exhaustion. For the first time, he realized that he did not need to see the destination to trust the journey. He had already won, because he never stopped moving. He whispered once more, his voice steady, certain, unshakable. He climbed the hill slowly, every muscle in his body burning. But his spirit was alive, fierce and focused. The path was steep, uneven, and the stones beneath his shoes slipped with every other step. Yet he refused to stop. He remembered when he first started how he dreamed of standing tall, of proving that he could make something out of nothing. Back then, his vision was bright and beautiful, a painting of success with no shadows. But the real world had taught him differently. Success, he realized, was not a picture. It was a war. A long, silent battle fought inside the heart. He had faced storms that no one saw, days when he smiled outside but was breaking inside, nights when he prayed for strength and felt nothing but emptiness in return. He thought about giving up many times. He even reached the edge once, ready to walk away, ready to call it over. But then he remembered something small, his younger self, that boy who dreamed big, who believed that anything was possible, who looked up at the stars and whispered, "One day I will make it." How could he betray that boy? How could he let him down now? He clenched his fist tighter. The cold wind cut through his jacket, but he kept walking. The higher he climbed, the more the world below began to fade. The noise, the judgment, the comparisons, they all fell away. What remained was quiet. Just him, his breath, and his will. It struck him that this is what true growth feels like. Not applause, not recognition, but solitude, where you meet yourself for the first time, face to face, without pretending. He reached a small plateau halfway up. The horizon stretched before him like a living painting. Fields rolled into the distance, the sunlight cutting through clouds in golden streaks. For a moment, he just stood there, breathing, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat, and then he smiled. He realized something powerful. He had already come farther than he thought possible. How many times had he told himself he could not make it? How many times had he thought, this is the end? Yet here he was, still moving, still fighting. Every setback had built something within him. Every failure had taught him endurance. Every heartbreak had carved space for wisdom. He whispered softly, almost in gratitude, "Thank you for the struggle. It made me strong." He sat down for a moment, feeling the ground beneath him solid, real. He took out a small notebook from his bag, the same one he had carried for years. Inside were scribbles of ideas, plans that failed, goals that were yet to be reached. But also inside were words that kept him alive. Little notes he had written to himself, "Do not stop now. You are stronger than this. The world is waiting for your story." He read them again and his eyes stung. Not from pain, but from remembering how far he had come. He thought of all the people he had met along the way. Some who helped him, some who hurt him, and some who doubted him. He no longer held anger toward any of them. They were part of his path. They were part of his becoming. The wind picked up again, rustling the trees, carrying with it a quiet hum that sounded like hope. He stood up, tightened his backpack, and looked ahead at the final stretch of the climb. He could see the summit now, still distant but clear, and with that sight came a new kind of energy, the kind that comes from knowing that you are almost there. He began walking again. Each step was heavy, but his heart was light. Each breath burned, but his eyes were alive. He remembered the people who had told him to quit, who had said, "It is too late," or "It is too hard." He smiled now, not in revenge, but in peace. They had only seen the surface. They did not know the fire inside him. He whispered again to himself, as if reminding his soul of its purpose, "I must keep going." And the mountains seemed to hear him. The wind grew softer, the path clearer. He stood at the top of that hill, his breath slow, his eyes soft with understanding. The journey had not been about reaching the summit. It had been about discovering who he became along the way. He looked out over the horizon where the fading sunlight painted gold upon the clouds. Every scar on his body, every ache in his bones felt like a badge of honor. He had not escaped the struggle, he had endured it. And in that endurance, he had found himself. For a long time, he believed that success was the prize at the end. That one day he would arrive somewhere and all the pain would make sense. But standing there, he realized that the meaning had never been at the destination. It had always been hidden in every step, every fall, every rise. He thought of all the times he had whispered, "I must keep going." Those words had carried him across valleys of doubt, through storms of fear, through the loneliness that silence brings. They had become more than motivation. They had become identity. A soft wind brushed against his face. It felt like the world itself was breathing with him, reminding him that life is not a race to finish, but a rhythm to follow. You move, you stumble, you rise, you learn, and then you move again. He closed his eyes and smiled. He realized that no dream is ever truly lost. It may sleep for a while, it may hide behind pain or fear, but it never dies. It waits for the day you are ready to fight again. He took one last look at the view below, his heart calm, his mind clear. The road behind him had been hard, but it had built something unbreakable inside him. A will that would not yield, a belief that would not fade. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and began to descend the other side of the mountain. The journey was not over. It was only changing shape. Because life never ends with one victory, one success, one dream fulfilled. There is always another climb, another purpose, another horizon waiting to be reached. And as his footsteps echoed against the quiet earth, his voice rose once more, stronger than before, steadier than ever. And must keep going. The wind carried those words down the mountain, across the valleys, through every heart that still fought to believe. And somewhere in someone's silence, those words would awaken again, a whisper, a spark, a reminder that no matter how heavy the path feels, you are still moving forward. Because true strength is not found in never falling. It is found in rising every single time. He smiled to himself, the last light of the day reflecting in his eyes. And as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, his journey continued, not because he had to, but because he chose. Because no matter how far he had come and no matter how far he had left to go, his heart still whispered the same truth. I must keep going.